Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you're listening. In episode 20 of the podcast, we talk what employers need to do to be best in class in recruitment communications. With the RAD Awards entries opening this week, I chat with last year's Chair of Judges, Mark Horley. As well as judging the best work in the industry, Mark is co-founder of Tonic, the employer marketing agency that's worked with a whole host of organisations over the last 8 years and won a big bag of awards to boot. It was great to take some time out with Mark today, so let's get on with the chat. Hi Mark, how's it going?
Good, how are you, Chris?
Yeah, good, thanks. What part of the world are you working from home in? I'm assuming you're working from home like lots of people are.
Yeah, I'm working from home from Greenwich, just outside Greenwich actually. So in South London. So not such a bad day for weather, but kids back at school. So really
bliss.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Nice. And how have you found the whole working from home thing over the last few months?
All right, actually. We closed the office probably a couple of days before the official close, when the government suggested it back in March. And ironically, I went back into the office last week just to kind of get it ready for people starting to go back. And actually, that felt more weird than sitting here. So,
really?
So actually, this has become the new normal, if you like. And I hate that phrase because everyone says it, but it's kind of become very, very normal. And we always set the business up. 8 years ago, in 2012, we always set the business up to be mobile because it was just Tom and I, so we had to be mobile. So when this happened, it was literally everyone picked their laptops up and just put it on a different desk. So it was good.
Nice.
Yeah. But how you found it? Found it all right? Yeah,
it's been okay actually. I mean, I work from home a lot anyway, given that I'm kind of a one-man band. So going into London as and when's needed. So it hasn't felt that different. Although having the kids, not being in the house all the time has its benefits, that's for sure. So but it's been nice having them around as well. Usual thing. But so let's people listening, there'll be a lot of people who know you, but let's kind of kickstart things with a bit of introduction about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So first, thanks for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I've heard a lot of your podcasts. Slightly jealous, so it's been great.
Good stuff. Thank you.
That I'm on. So I'm Mark Horley. I am Chief Creative Officer of Tonic. For those that don't know Tonic, we're a brand and communications agency specialising in employer brand. We've got a line that says we build talent brands people want to work for. And we are 8 years old. It started, as I just mentioned, actually, just Tom and I, two of us. We grew to just under 50 just before the pandemic, and like everybody, we've just shrunk a little bit in the last sort of 6 months. But we specialise in brand communications, digital content, social, all the things that you would expect, really. Won a few awards, which is quite nice.
And 74, isn't it? 74.
74, yeah. And we've got 16 nominations out there. So we've just had 5 from the RMAs.
Oh yes, of course.
11 with the UBMAs. So so hopefully that's 74. You never know, it might turn into 90. I doubt it. I think we'll be lucky if we get 76. But I'm joking. The work is really nice, but there's some stiff competition. So it's good.
And talking of awards, you last year you were chair of the RAD Awards, and I've been on the judging panel of the RADs and really enjoyed it. How was being chair of the awards? Was it a good one for 2020? It was the first one of the new decade.
It was, and the 30th birthday as well. So
nice.
It was a big one. It was really good. I mean, I've always been a big fan of the RADs because it's always the one that you want to try and win, whether it's a category or whether it's work of the year. And and I think there's kind of I've watched lots of people be chairs of the RADs over the years who I've respected, and I've just thought I would just absolutely love to do it because to chair that kind of awards, at the pinnacle is exciting, and you get to see some really, really interesting work, and the guys put it together so well. So Richard and Heather, they put it together so well over there that it couldn't be more objective and more measured in the way that it gets done. So that you get a gut feel. So as a chair, you look through all of the entries before everybody else gets to see them. And you're putting some in the right categories, for example, or if some haven't quite got the content, you can go back for it and all the rest of it, or you can kind of make sure everything's ready for the judges, so you get to see everything. And it's just the sheer range of work and the sheer range of thinking is exciting, and because when you're in an agency, you get to see what you do. So exactly. When you're as a chair, or even when you're as a judge, you get to see what everybody's doing, and some of the thinking out there is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, for sure. And what was your first RADS experience?
My first RADS experience. Yeah. So the RADS actually was the first award I ever won.
Oh, really? Nice.
I'm going back a while. God, how long ago was it? It was 90. I think it was 95. I want to say 95, 96, and it was an ad for Whitbread for retail sales managers.
Yeah.
And they looked after 12 pubs. And the ad, I remember it was 12 cocktail cherries on a stick, and it just said it's retail with a bit more bite. And that seemed to win an award, which was nice. But what's scary is that ad and the Cable and Wireless Act came up at the 30th come up on the 30th spin last year. And I said to Charlie, one of our project managers, Charlie, and I said to him, when were you born, Charlie? And he said, I was born in 99. So that my ad.
Oh, no.
Actually older than he was, which is a bit worried. But yeah. So, yeah, it was all a bit weird. But
I remember my first one was probably like 2002, perhaps. 2002, no, maybe 2003. Alan Partridge was hosting, the Master of Ceremonies, and of course he was hilarious.
I remember that.
But I think at the time it was when Virgin Atlantic were winning loads of awards.
Yeah,
I remember seeing lots of display ads, loads of display ads, and it's goodness me, times have changed. Like especially, I think obviously last year was the first one of the new decade, and the RADs is says the champion, the very best in recruitment communication. So, and in your view, kind of what do you think is, or will the very best mean, or should mean this decade?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question actually, and it's one that I kind of you think about quite a lot, because obviously as a creative anyway, you're trying to stay ahead of the pack, if you like, and do new things. And what I saw in the RADs in January last year, and the stuff that won, you'll have seen it, the work of the year and all the rest of it. It was so highly integrated. It was really, really well connected, and it felt, and they all felt real, and it felt connected, and it felt like, that these channels weren't the kind of what you used to hear a few years ago of, and this is what it looks like on Instagram. It was right for the channel, and it was right for market, and gave something of value to the audience and to the reader or to the viewer, and that was what was really exciting about the work that we saw, whether it was the brand work or whether it was the experiential or the social categories or whatever. The level of thinking and the level of attention that people got gave to what the candidate or the colleague was looking for, and what was of most value to them was what was really interesting, I thought. And I think, and if you'd have asked me this question before, sitting at home and coming out hopefully the other side of a pandemic, I'd have said probably that kind of relationship and that kind of connection with the colleague and candidate, and thinking about what they need to hear more of, and what they need to see, and what value you can bring to them as an employer would have been, what would have started to probably drive some of that narrative around, building your reputation in that way. I think since the pandemic, though, I think what that's done is, ironically, I think it's accelerated it probably another a good sort of 4 or 5 years in the
For sure, yeah.
in the that sense of engagement, that sense of experience and data is hugely important. And I think actually what you'll find in the next 10 years is that acceleration, I think will obviously slow down, but I think that the kind of the need for data, and not just data of how is my post performed or how is my website performing and what are the bounce rates and all the rest of it, but that data around behavioural understanding, that data around how are people really feeling about this. There's a great quote from David Ogilvy, and hopefully I'll say it right, but it's people don't do what they say what they do, or tell you what they feel. It's something like that. And actually that's really true, because people will say what they think you want to hear rather than what they're really feeling. And actually I think what we'll find in our market particularly is that work around, oh sorry, a cat just walked in and it's the one that bites me.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's a bit, sorry, you said this might happen, didn't you? There's your experience, and now he's going through a cat flap, and this is all going to go on recorded tape as well. So where was that? Yeah, so I think that idea of behavioural science, that idea of and that behavioural data that we can now get, and that above the line agencies are using so well to understand how people are reacting to the content that you're placing out, how people are feeling about you as an employer or as a brand is I think really where it's going to go. And I think that data is then going to enable us to drive that, really help us drive a true evaluation and a true customer, colleague experience and employee experience, as we call it. Because if you think about brands, their job is not just to sell you a product. Their job is to build a relationship with you so that you buy more of their products and you endorse their brand and you wear the t-shirts with the logos on and all the rest of it. And it's no different actually to what we're trying to do. And a job isn't just a job now. It's something that you buy into the values and the culture and the behaviours of that organisation. So for an organisation to measure and match and enable an individual to think that's the kind of place I'd like to work for, I think that idea of behavioural science, that idea of behavioural data, and almost semantics and emotion really is going to play a huge part in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, I think. And actually as a result, you'll find that creativity shifts. And a few years ago, and actually you still see it now, that creativity dies because of data, and I don't believe that at all. Actually, I think actually I've done some of the most effective work, certainly with people like the Met Police recently, because we understand the data about how people feel, not just what people think about being a police officer. We know how they feel about being a police officer, and actually that changes through different demographics, different age groups, different genders, different race and ethnicities, and so it's not enough now to say, we are looking for engineers or we are looking for police officers, and all of those people all behave like that, because that just puts you in another bucket, really. So
it's very, very true, actually. I think it's the whole thing about who is your target audience, and it's so often comes back in a brief as demographic data, isn't it? And actually it's demographics, but also, let's say, get a bit scientific here, but psychographics, where actually it is, absolutely it's those needs and motivations and the situation someone is in their life that is really important to have on top of that demographic data. Because you talk about value, how on earth can you add value if you don't really understand, if you're just guessing about who the target audience is?
Exactly. And I think that's the key, because even within certain, as you say, within certain demographics, within certain age groups, even I just look at my daughters. I look at my eldest daughter Emily, who's just gone to secondary school today. I look at her against her friend, and Emily was really cool about it. She's like, it's fine, I'm going to be fine, it's going to be good, I'm excited. But then her friend was really nervous, and there's two kids there, same age, and actually that sense of emotion, that sense of anticipation in one and nervousness in another was really profound. So you can't bucket people together anymore. And I think that sense of, we've talked about personalization for years, and how do how do we kind of become hyper personalized and all the rest of it. But I think that prevalence of data, that ability to understand it, will be which is clearly there, and we're using it and working with it quite a lot. It really gives people a sense that you can almost, you can change things obviously in real time anyway, but it means that you can be more and more and more right for that group of people, because the data is consistently coming at you saying they're reacting like this to this piece of message, they're reacting like that to that piece of message, and therefore you can make an informed decision. So for clients and for customers, and for kind of brands, it means you can get and I think you can get more for their money, frankly, because it can be more right than ever before, and that's the key. Is because as budgets become tighter after the pandemic, and they are tight already, and as the job market is shifted and so on. I saw a graph yesterday where you could see where the pandemic had really sort of killed the market. And it's now starting to come up, but maybe there's a nervousness. So people are going to want that, they're going to want that data, that kind of ROI, how do we know this is going to work? So that's where that's going to happen. And that's just going to accelerate, I think, over the next 10 years for sure.
I mean, you mentioned value, and it's something I talk about, a lot, and have mentioned in this podcast quite a few times. And whenever we talk about value, I like to kind of put some meat on the bones of that. So kind of in your view, what is that adding value piece for you? What does it actually look like? What examples would that actually be in terms of adding value to potential employees?
I think for me, the adding value piece is, it changes depending on, again, it changes depending on who you're trying to talk to. For some, the value of, for example, let's take the Met Police, as an example. For some, understanding and having a connection beyond the blue uniform, and seeing actually the value of what they could potentially provide to the varying communities of London, is really. Can you hear me still? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
My screen went blank. To the communities of London, is really important. So the value. So there's a kind of a value exchange there, I think, of this opening up that opportunity and opening up people's eyes to that opportunity. You hear of, and we've worked with kind of student recruitment and grad recruitment early careers, where the value is there of learning and so on. And similarly in the tech market, that idea of adding value to the conversation isn't just about saying come work here, it's good. It's actually saying, look, we understand that. Let's take the tech market. We understand that you're really interested in knowledge, you want peer learning, you want open source technology, you want, it's why people are on GitHub and Stack Overflow and all the others, and it's about that. It's about employers looking at their groups of people and saying what's of most value to them. And it might be the value exchange, as it's described with the Met Police, of the value here is the value that you can bring, and actually that sense of purpose, if you like. And I try and steer away from purpose because it becomes the new authentic, and so. But because it never is the minute you say it. But the reason that you want to do this is really important. And then you've got the tech guys whose need is learning. And understanding more data, more code, more systems, more technologies, so that they become greater at what they do. And then therefore their opportunity for that value exchange is, I understand what my code's doing in the world, and what it can do. It's not just about writing a tiny bit of code and never seeing what happens to it. It's about, where am I in, if you like, the value chain of what I'm doing, and actually what's the end result of this? Is this code for good, or is it not? And and I think Refinitiv taught me that a few years ago when we started working with them, that kind of the value of what people are really thinking about, and actually what the and actually what value that they can bring. And so I think value doesn't just go one way. I think it's not just what the employer can do for the employee, it's actually the other way as well. But that value piece has to match against a set of values, if you like, a set of beliefs that you go, actually, I get what this organisation is trying to do and what it's here for, and actually I want to be a part of that because I can see what I can contribute to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think given over this decade and beyond, job roles will become a bit more fluid, and so therefore it's not that you can just ask for, well, we need a particular set of skills and we need you to do a particular set of things for us. It's going to be, well, we need you to come in and do a variety of things and kind of, be more agile in the roles you're doing. So therefore you need, as kind of said in the previous episode with Gavin Russell, is that you need something else to hang it off. And that is, that connection you feel with the values and, dare I say it, purpose of that organization, which means you've got to do so much more than just sling job opportunities or sling kind of, this is why we're so great and this is why you should join us. And going back to what you're saying about the awards that you were judging last year, there's a lot of examples there where the organizations that won were adding value, for sure. One thing that we've talked about before, is going about employee experience, and there's the employee engagement category. The RAD has been around for a good few years now. I couldn't say exactly when it started out, but it's been around for a good chunk of time. So for this decade, do you kind of see that actually there's going to be, let's say, maybe more importance played on the employee engagement piece in the RAD Awards? Yeah,
I think not just in the RAD Awards. I think generally, I think what you'll find is that whilst organisations have had to kind of resize and pivot, if you like, because of what's happened. I think what's going to happen over the next few years is that it's going to be more important that, again, organisations build that the experience in a way that, again, adds that value. So what the touch points through the journey of someone being completely unaware of who you are or kind of some kind of idea of what you do, through to them joining you and becoming an engaged champion, and that seamless journey of benefit, if you like. So and that's where the value exchange comes in again. But it's that point around how do you get someone from to a point of joining you? As you say, you can't just keep saying, come work here, it's good, and throwing jobs in the market. Whilst there is an abundance of people at the moment, because lots of organisations have had to let people go, they're still going to be looking for the same things. Whilst they, and actually what will happen, I feel like what might happen is, because if you're out of a job, the first thing you want to do is get a job. And so some of those things that you might have been considering pre-pandemic of do my values fit, do my behaviours, does the way this organisation present itself sit with me well, and all that kind of stuff. I think that becomes secondary when you've got a mortgage to pay, or you've got bills to pay, or kids to feed, or whatever, and I'm just going to get a job. I just need a job. And actually, organisations, ironically, will probably need to work harder in that kind of reputation and engagement piece around in order to make sure that those people that they've hired because they're brilliant, they're staying with them because actually they are aligned, and actually the individual feels like they made the right decision and not just a decision to get them out of the situation they were in. And it's interesting, I was talking to a client just yesterday from a tech point of view, and they were saying, if you'd have asked us this question a year ago, we'd have been really, really struggling for these people. But actually we're filling, I think they had the fastest fill in a tech role ever. It was like literally 3 days from start to finish. That's unprecedented, but it's because the market, there's so many people in the market who are really, really, really good. And again, their motivation is, I need a job, I need to get something. And I think what will happen over the next few years is that as this starts to settle, and if there is that, whether it's a V-shaped recovery or a U-shaped recovery or whatever kind of recovery it is, what we'll end up with is a place where those people that have taken those jobs now because they need a job and they're really good might then start looking in 6, 12, 18 months time. Because they're interested, because they took this job because they needed it, and did they take it for all of the right reasons? And these are just things that have been running through my mind. So that point around employee experience is going to be really important. So firstly, is this organisation keeping its promise to me? Which we've all heard of lots of times before. But is the reality a fair reflection of what they were telling me? And then actually all those touch points, whether it's through learning development or training or benefits or rewards or flexibility of working from home, whatever it might be, those key points all the way through, are these things contributing to me doing a brilliant, helping an individual do a brilliant job, and therefore actually I want to stay with this organisation. So I think in my mind, what I think might happen is that organisations just have to may have to work a bit harder, because whilst the market is buoyant now and it's kind of a buyer's market in many respects, it's seller's market in many respects. I've got a job, do you want it? Whereas before, people were having to work really hard because loads and loads of people were in employment, and having to work harder on their reputation, hard on their kind of presence, and to attract the right people. Now those people are there and say, yeah, I'll come work for you. But what I think it could go 360 in the next few years, where people will be like, well, actually, I took this job because I needed it, but actually the job over there I really want now. And actually, that's where organisations have to work harder, and that I think is where the employee experience bit comes in. You will have a big part to play. That kind of, how do we really engage? How is our reputation really presented? How are we really helping our people do the job that we're asking them to do well? And actually, so it's all very well getting them to join, but I think we need to get organisations to ask them questions. So why would they stay? What is it about us that would really make them stay? So then you've got those two questions: why would they join, and why would they stay? And the why would they join at the moment could be a whole host of things to say, like just need a job. But then you've got to ask your question: so why would they really stay with us? Are we really providing an experience that not only they think this is incredible, and I've learned a lot, I'm doing a lot, and I'm achieving all the things that I'd like to achieve for myself and the business I'm working for, but then equally the ability to then go back out into the market and say, do you know what, these guys are incredible. I never knew it then, but I do now, or whatever it is, and I think there's a real opportunity for organizations to kind of use that employee experience to really, as we've talked about, to really engage, really connect, so that people do want to stay, and actually they become your advocates and all the rest of it. And they end up leaving, for after several years, but then they end up coming back. Once they've got experience and become a more rounded individual, working somewhere else, and they may go back. And exactly.
That's kind of
really important. We've been working with organisations just recently, actually, on what they've called alumni comms. So how do we get people, how do we get back together again, almost, conversations around, they were brilliant, so they've left, they've done their thing, and lots of organizations have alumni networks and stuff, but they kind of engage and they invite them back and all the rest of it. But to physically do a piece of communications and actually externally talk to their alumni about coming back is a really interesting place to be, and I think you'll see a lot more of that, actually.
And I think, I don't know what you think about this, but as I found over the years is that you have your marketing campaigns to make sure you're getting the right talent into an organization, and there can be a decent chunk of budget put towards those campaigns, maybe not as much as consumer campaign, and you could argue actually there should be more of a parity between the two, given the importance of employees in an organization, because without employees you wouldn't have an organization. But I've often found that the marketing budgets kind of then stop, and then when you move on to the candidate experience, you go from seeing a great experiential piece or a great looking website, beautiful creative, great content, and then assessment center is maybe a lever arch file, or it's the email you get from the ATS, which is you know, thanks for your application, or we'll get back to you if we can, or it's sign up. You've made all this effort to actually get people to go to the website, and it's sign up, and you can only sign up really if you're looking for a job. If you do sign up, all you do get is job vacancies, which seems like such a missed opportunity. And I've talked about in previous episodes about kind of, if you were a media company or if you're a broadcaster, what content would you create for your audience, your readership, your listenership? So my point there is that actually, and you know, going in, that kind of experience needs to be throughout, doesn't it? And when it comes to you then joining an organization, you need to have that. So I suppose you need to maintain a level, don't you? You need to, if you've upped the ante right at the beginning with your marketing, you need to make sure that's continued throughout the whole process, as you've touched on already.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's you know, for me, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, but it's kind of, it's not about the hard sell all the way through. Again, it comes back to what we talked about at the beginning of this, about you know, what's of most value to someone, and actually the beauty you've got of people being part of your organization is that you can get, you know, hopefully you can get to know them and actually say what's, you know, actually, you know, there are people that, you know, just want to be great at the thing they do. They don't, you know, they don't necessarily want this massive career growth or career path, or go from manager to senior manager to director to whatever. You know, some people just want to be, as one person described it once, one of our clients, some people just want to be a great gardener, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, you know, it comes back to that individual of looking at what's important to them, and not bucketing people in this kind of space of, well, they all must think this because they're all software engineers, or they're all data scientists, or whatever. And I think, you know, that's what's, so yeah, it's got to be all the way through. And I think that's where I think, you know, it becomes quite interesting because you know, you've got to keep your promises. You know, we've talked about it a lot, and you know, over the years, people have always thought about employer brand, you know, as an external thing, as an attraction thing. But now, I think more than ever, organisations are starting, are not just realising, but actively going, do you know what, you know, our employer brand should be all the way through, and actually should add value at every single stage. And I think, well, certainly now, what I've noticed, you talk about marketing agency, the marketing budgets and all the rest of it. The marketeers are now seeing that people are the most important asset. You know, it's not just the product. You know, and you know that we've got clients who are actively working with their colleagues to present their brand and be the face of their brand. And so when you're in that space, you know, actually part of the danger is, where does employer brand really sit now? You know, because if marketing think that, you know, actually our colleagues can tell a really great story because it's real, it's honest, it's human, and all the rest of it, you know, and aren't they brilliant? And actually, if we want to sell our product, then why don't you talk to Dave, who could sell you the product? Don't just think about us as the organisation. Think about it as Dave, because as we all know, people buy from people; they don't buy from organisations. And actually, so then some of the conversations we've been having is, where can employer brand sit? What space should it own as a result of you know, marketing and brand, if you like, going, actually there's huge equity in what our people can talk about, and actually it's far more believable in that context. And you know, you're right, you know, and if you think about, go back to the experience, you know, they spend a load of money on the front end. The organisations spend a load of money on the front end of the attraction. It all looks sparkly, and then the process becomes automated. And the thing that I remember being at a conference once with Tom. I'm sure people will know Tom Chesterton. He's been on a few stages, a bit taller than me. You know, always wears a suit. Nice guy. Anyway. But you know, we were at this conference, and they were talking about, you know, how the candidate is at the heart of everything they do, and and it was like, oh, it's really interesting. But then actually, within about half an hour of this panel conversation, every single one of them talked about automating the process. So you know, automating the way that the job feeds come through, automating the CV application, automating a video interview, and it kind of worked out that somebody would have to go probably through about 3 or 4 stages before they actually got to talk to a human being in that organisation. And I remember telling someone, going, where's the human in all of this? You know, we're putting the candidate at the heart and what's the most value, but then they automate the things so that they almost production line these candidates through the journey. And it's like, well, how on earth can the, you know, and all right, you can make the ATS look better and you can make the email sound more attractive and you can always put the name on the top and all the rest of it. But is it really an experience? Is that really the experience? Because, you know, if you go and buy a, I don't know, if you go and buy a TV, for example, you know, you walk into a store, you can go online, you know, you can still chat to someone online, you can still kind of, you know, go in and meet people and understand, you know, and there's an interaction and there's a benefit that's presented as a result. But, you know, for me, it's like, where's the human being in that entire process if I've got to go through 4 or 5 stages before I can get to the end of it? And so for me, again, I think that's where the employer brand can really work for people around that experience. Because if marketing are now seeing it as a big deal, which is it's taken a number of years, and you know, and I think they've kind of forgotten about I think a lot of organisations have forgotten about that. Well, brand's brand, so it's mine, and you know all the rest of it. There is no such thing as the employer brand, and ironically, I do believe that. I don't think there is a thing for an employer brand. I think it's a brand. It's just, but it's about how you present that element, that perspective of the brand to whoever it is you're talking to, and that comes all the way back to the data piece. Understand to understand what they want to see and feel and hear, and then you've got a really good opportunity to then engage them.
Yeah, totally. I think that piece around organizations really now understanding that, or many organizations understanding how important, you know, employer brand is. And there's that, you did some stuff with Peppermoth a couple of months ago. I spoke to Gavin at Peppermoth on episode 19. There's that really interesting stat that came in your blog post, which is 61% of business leaders view culture, engagement and talent experience as the top HR initiative for the next 12 months, which is, you know, is absolutely, I think, on the money. Because, you know, if you don't have your employees, really you don't have an organization, you don't have customers, you don't exist, you know, in 99% of the time. And your employer brand is the employee experience, isn't it? I mean, that's really what it is. So, especially if it's being truthful. I think it's really, that's a really interesting point. I was chatting with someone on LinkedIn yesterday kind of about that. I think it was about a video of the Jose Mourinho at Tottenham.
Right.
The Amazon series. They did one on Man City. And they've now done one on Mourinho, and it's a quick snippet of. It was from the Happiness Index. They posted something, and it was a video of Jose being introduced to people at Tottenham, and like finance. Oh, I love you guys. IT. Oh, if we didn't have you guys, it wouldn't exist. And then it was HR. It's like dangerous or something like that. Like, oh my goodness, really? You know, but it's that kind of spun off a conversation against that post. You know, which is around, you know, what is the role of
what's the role of HR?
And it's so much more than just the managing of people as assets that are about churning out an output. You know, it's which goes back to the whole, therefore, the importance of employee experience in that, and the role that HR have to play in that. Kind of hope to see that there's more HR, you know, professionals actually leading organizations. Because they have that understanding of really the importance of people, as opposed to, you could argue that maybe, you know, before, when people are our most important, you know, part of our company is, or people make us different. It's probably maybe seen as a bit of a phrase, as opposed to, I think now it's really being understood as being, it's actually true. Wow. It's actually true.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, again, as we talked about, you know, I think it is the defining factor between, you know, success and failure. And from a, you know, and I think, you know, all of our clients actually, you know, whether they're kind of talent acquisition, or whether they're talent attraction, or whether they're HR directors or CPOs, or, you know, CRHOs or whatever, you know, every single one of the guys that we seem to work with, you know, don't see their people as just an asset, a resource that the old resources might phrase it as. And it's certainly not the old tea and sympathy HR department of frankly, as my mum used to be. My mum was in HR, and it was all tea and sympathy, and and she used to talk to me about the job ads that she used to put out and stuff like that, and and it's way all the clients that we work with, and I think actually most of the industry really that I certainly talk to know that there isn't just the value of the brand, it's what's it for, and actually as you say, that kind of I guess how would you phrase that? Is that sort of line of people are our most important asset? That kind of the sort of diatribe of kind of someone saying this thing that you just say. Certainly now, and are all seeing that it's the real thing, and actually that if you don't have brilliant people, it's like us, at Tonic, if we don't have brilliant creatives and brilliant account managers, and brilliant motion graphics people will struggle to work with us, because they can go and get quality elsewhere, and so that's kind of, and that's the same I think in every industry. If you've if you've got two people selling a TV and one's sitting there picking his nose and the other one isn't, is interested in watch, which TV are you going to buy? It's
very true. Yeah.
So it comes. So they say people buy people, and I think that's really true. And so as I say, I think it's true for all of our clients. The certain people we work with is that people aren't a resource; they're actually the engine, and that's quite exciting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So with we're not actually, I think, overtly talked about COVID-19 coronavirus, which is quite good actually, because there's plenty of podcasts to talk about that. But certainly, this decade has been, as I kind of said in episode 19, is like we've kind of kickstarted. The decade has been kickstarted by crisis, that's for sure. So kind of there's a bit of a leave behind for listeners. So kind of what do you think the best in recruitment communications need to kind of tick off their list when it comes to being the best in recruitment communications?
Yeah, I think, and this is going to sound ironic coming from creative, because I think if you speak to I speak to some of my creative peers, they'd say, well, it's got to be about brilliant thinking and brilliant creativity and innovation. But for me, actually, it's about, I think I would talk about it in three steps. I would say, one, do you have the data? Do you have the behavioural understanding of who it is you're trying to talk to, and not just kind of demographic buckets or gender buckets or ethnicity buckets? Do you really understand? Do you really have the behavioural science behind what it is you're trying to achieve? That's number one. Number two, have we looked at, and do we really know what, through the employee experience, what parts of the employee experience are most important, that have most value, and that have the most opportunity for engagement, so that you're connecting on a level that's far beyond just employee and employer. You're connecting as people. And then number three, once you've got that data and that understanding, that behavioural insight, and then you have that ability to understand the points in your experience, because everyone's employee experience is going to be different, but as an employer, so in that experience, what's most important to you as an employer, that's where then the creativity and innovation comes in and makes it, because then that, and as a result of that, the fourth point, which I know I said three, but I've just thought of a fourth, which is you're then going to be able to prove to your business, to your CEO, to your CRHO, to your marketing, whoever, you're going to be able to report back to the business and say, not only do we have the understanding and insight, and we have the evidence to prove that everything we are going to suggest and is going to work. And I think that's exciting. So understand it, got to be about the data. If you haven't got that, then what are you doing? You might as well just throw an ad out. You might as well just throw an ad out on the billboard and hope somebody looks at it. Literally. So understand the data, understand those touch points all the way through the journey, not just to the point of joining, all the way through, and create that advocacy, and then bring in your creativity and innovation, which is absolutely aligned to your data and those touch points. So, and think about your brand in that context. And then then you have the ROI, the evidence, and the proof to your business that 20 grand or 200 grand or whatever it is that they've invested in this has been value for money. We talked about value at the beginning, and we talked about a value exchange, and it's no different. Why would I spend all of and people will say, why would I spend 100 grand on this project? And because we think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
If you can prove it, brilliant. Yeah, it's the right thing to do because, and I've said this to my creative teams over the years, and I've run teams of 50 people and international teams and so on. And creativity can't just be about well, I like it. It's got to be. I always said to them, always have a because someone will ask why have you chosen green, why have you chosen that typeface, why have you put the picture of the kid on the dad's shoulders, like I'm looking at your picture now, and you've got to have an answer, and that's true across the whole thing. Why should I spend £5 grand? Well, not just because we think it might work, and so to reiterate, get your data, get your behavioral insight, get your understanding. Get to understand your touch points, really, really, really understand them. Don't just think, well, we think that's it. Ask, make sure that they're the right things. And if they're different to other organizations, that's kind of fine, but make sure they're the right things for you, and then build your creativity and innovation over the top. And that will bring your ROI, you'll be more targeted, more valuable, and it will create a much, 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 much bigger and better experience, and therefore a better reputation of you as an employer.
Yeah, good stuff. That's really good. I think that's it's been a great chat. Thanks very much. Nice way to see us through to the weekend. And before my kids start bashing down the door, I think that's probably a perfect time to end. But yeah, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks.
Really enjoyed it, and catch up soon.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks. We really appreciate it. As I say, it's just nice to spend half an hour or so just talking about this stuff. You spend every day doing, and to actually just sit back and just kind of shoot the breeze and chat about it. It's been great. So again, thanks for inviting me. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, mate.
All right. See you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow or subscribe for the latest episode drops. And don't forget to get in touch if you want to contribute.